The final battle of the war began when Supreme Commander Thrakvalum made the same choice he had forced on humanity 8 months earlier. With his home fleet recalled and his supply lines cut, he could surrender to the humans or fight to the death. His genetic conditioning made surrender impossible, so he chose to die fighting. Admiral Lisa Carter commanded the human fleet that met the desperate Zephyrian forces in Earth's solar system. Her ships had been reinforced by volunteers from 3 Galactic Council species who had been secretly inspired by human courage. For the first time in 50,000 years, the peaceful aliens were choosing to fight. All ships, this is Admiral Carter. Lisa broadcast to the combined fleet. Today we end this war. We fight not for conquest or revenge, but to show the galaxy that freedom is worth any price. Amy Morrison was now a lieutenant aboard the flagship, and she served as communications officer for the final battle. At 19, she had grown up during the war and learned that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be willing to fight for it, Admiral Amy reported. The Zephyrian fleet is approaching Earth. Commander Thrakvalum is broadcasting on all frequencies that he will destroy our planet rather than surrender. Lisa looked at the tactical display and saw 200 Zephyrian ships moving toward Earth like a spear aimed at the heart of humanity. Her own fleet had 300 vessels, but many of them were damaged from months of fighting. Ambassador Veltar of the Alphean race was commanding 12 ships from his peaceful species. His people had not fought a battle in 20,000 years. But they had learned from watching humans that some principles were worth defending. Human Admiral Veltar said over the communication system, "My people stand with you today. We have remembered what it means to choose right over easy." The battle began when the 2 fleets met near the orbit of Mars. Zephyrian ships fought with the desperation of cornered animals while human vessels struck back with the determination of people defending their homes. The space between the planets lit up with weapons fire and explosions. Amy watched the battle displays and saw ships dying on both sides. Each flashing light represented hundreds of lives lost, but she knew this had to be finished. The galaxy would never be safe while the Zephyrian Empire existed. Supreme Commander Thrakvalum led the final charge himself in his massive flagship. The ship was the size of a city and armed with weapons that could crack moons. He aimed it directly at Earth with the intention of destroying the human home world, even if it cost him everything. Amy Admiral Carter said, "I need you to coordinate the defense of Earth. Get every available ship between that flagship and our planet." Amy took control of the planetary defense grid and began directing ships to intercept the Zephyrian flagship. She knew her father would be proud to see her defending their homeworld, just as he had defended the colonies. The flagship broke through the human defensive line and continued toward Earth. Nothing seemed able to stop it until Amy made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She programmed the defense satellites to ram the enemy ship, knowing that the explosions would destroy her own command post. Admiral, Amy said calmly, "I am redirecting all defense platforms to collision course with the flagship. It is the only way to stop them from reaching Earth." Lisa understood what Amy was planning. "Lieutenant, that will destroy this entire station. You need to evacuate immediately." "No, ma'am," Amy replied. "Someone has to guide the platforms manually to make sure they hit the target." "This is what my father would do." Amy thought about Jake Morrison as she watched the defense platforms accelerate toward the Zephyrian flagship. Her father had died protecting innocent people, and now she would do the same. Some things were worth more than individual survival. The platform struck the flagship in a series of explosions that lit up the dark space around Earth. The massive Zephyrian vessel broke apart and its wreckage fell harmlessly into the sun. Amy Morrison died at her post, but she had saved her home world. The destruction of their flagship broke the remaining Zephyrian will to fight. Supreme Commander Thrakvalum was dead and his empire was finished. The surviving alien ships surrendered to the combined human and council fleet. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had developed a treatment that could free the Zephyrian warriors from their genetic conditioning. Without the artificial aggression that had driven their empire, the aliens began to understand concepts like mercy and honor in defeat. Former Supreme Commander Thrak now worked with humans to rebuild both species. He had learned that conquest was not strength, and that true victory came from protecting rather than destroying the Galactic Council underwent a fundamental change after witnessing the human example. Ambassador Veltar led the effort to create new policies that would defend freedom rather than just preserve peace. We have learned that there are worse things than war. Veltar addressed the Council Assembly. There is the death of the spirit. That comes from surrendering principles without a fight. The humans have taught us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do what is right. Despite fear, Carol Morrison attended the memorial service for the war dead with her granddaughter Sarah, who was Amy's daughter. The little girl was only 5, but she listened carefully as her grandmother told stories about her grandfather Jake and her mother Amy. Were they heroes, Grandma? Sarah asked as they looked at the memorial wall with thousands of names carved into Blackstone. Yes, sweetie, Carol replied. They were heroes because they chose to protect others instead of protecting themselves. They showed the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for. The memorial inscription was written in human languages and the scripts of all the council species. It reads simply, "They showed us that some things are worth more than life itself." Elena Rodriguez had become the leading expert on interspecies psychology, and her work helped different races understand each other better. She established schools where young beings from across the galaxy could learn about courage and sacrifice and the true meaning of freedom. The unknown threat that had originally driven Zephyrian expansion was still out there beyond the galactic rim, but now humans and aliens worked together to face whatever dangers might come. They had learned that unity was stronger than conquest, and that defending freedom was better than avoiding conflict. Years later, when other species faced the choice between resistance and surrender, they remembered the human example. Jake Morrison and Amy Morrison and all the others who had died in the war became legends that inspired courage across the galaxy. The cost of war had been terrible, but the price of freedom had been worth paying. Humanity had shown the galaxy that there were principles worth dying for, and that sometimes the greatest victory was simply refusing to give up. In the end, the humans had not just won a war. They had changed the galaxy forever by proving that courage and sacrifice could triumph over overwhelming odds. They had shown everyone the true cost of war and the real value of freedom. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center on Earth and studied the holographic display showing Zephyrian fleet positions. After 6 months of war, she had learned their patterns and found their weakness. The enemy was spread thin across human space, and their supply lines were vulnerable. General Brooks, Lisa said to the Army commander, "Operation Valkyrie is ready to begin. We have captured enough Zephyrian ships to make this work." General Kevin Brooks nodded as he looked at the plan. Human engineers had been studying captured alien technology, and they had figured out how to use Zephyrian ships against their own fleet. It was a desperate gamble, but it might turn the tide of war. Captain Tony Rodriguez was leading one of the captured enemy vessels toward a Zephyrian supply convoy. His ship looked like it belonged to the alien fleet, but inside it was crewed by humans, who had painted Zephyrian symbols on the walls to fool any inspections. "Remember, everyone," Tony said to his crew, "we have to act like real Zephyrian officers until we get close enough to attack. Dr. Rodriguez has taught us their language and their customs, but one mistake could give us away." Tony's sister Elena had worked for months to understand Zephyrian culture and military procedures. She had discovered that the alien empire was built on rigid hierarchy and unquestioning obedience. The aliens never expected deception because their own soldiers were incapable of lying to superiors. The supply convoy was carrying ammunition and fuel to 3 Zephyrian battle groups that were attacking human colonies in the Outer Rim. If the convoy was destroyed, those battle groups would be cut off from reinforcements and supplies. "Convoy Commander, this is Transport Vessel 779 requesting permission to join formation," Tony said in the Zephyrian language. He had practiced the alien speech patterns until he could sound like a native speaker. "Permission granted, 779, came the reply. "Take position at the rear of the convoy." Tony's ship moved into formation with 12 real Zephyrian vessels. His crew was nervous, but they trusted their captain, and they knew this mission could save thousands of human lives. Meanwhile, on the occupied Colony of New Geneva resistance fighters led by Dr. Elena Rodriguez were preparing to capture a high-ranking Zephyrian officer. They had been hiding in the ruins of the capital city for 3 months, waiting for the right opportunity, the target. Is Supreme Admiral Kethver, Elena told her team. He commanded the fleet that destroyed Captain Morrison's ships. If we can capture him alive, he might have information about Zephyrian military plans. The resistance fighters were colonists who had stayed behind when the Zephyrians invaded. They were teachers and farmers and store owners who had learned to be soldiers. They fought not for glory or conquest, but to protect their homes and families. Amy Morrison was now 18 and working as a communications specialist for Earth's military. She had intercepted a message that could change everything. The Zephyrian home fleet had been recalled to defend against an unknown threat from beyond the galactic rim. Admiral Carter, Amy said as she brought the decoded message to the command center. The Zephyrians are facing an invasion of their own territory. They have recalled their main fleet, and the forces attacking us are now cut off. Lisa read the message and felt hope for the first time in months. If the Zephyrian invasion force could not retreat or receive reinforcements, they would be trapped in human space. The hunters could become the hunted captain. Tony's mission was going perfectly until one of the real Zephyrian captains decided to board his ship for an inspection. Tony and his crew had to pretend to be aliens while the enemy officer walked through their vessel, looking for anything suspicious. Your crew seems nervous, transport captain, the Zephyrian officer said. Is there a problem with your ship? No, sir. Tony replied. We are just tired from the long journey. My crew has been working extra shifts to meet the supply schedule. The inspection lasted 20 minutes and Tony's crew never broke character. When the Zephyrian officer left, he was satisfied that everything was normal. He had no idea that he had just walked through a human warship disguised as one of his own vessels. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team struck at midnight when Supreme Admiral Kethver was traveling between command posts. They had studied his security patterns for weeks, and they knew exactly where to attack. The ambush lasted only 3 minutes, but when it was over, the second most powerful Zephyrian officer in human space was their prisoner. Elena's team had lost 2 fighters, but they had captured intelligence that could help end the war. Admiral, you are now a prisoner of the human resistance, Elena told Kethver as they moved him to a hidden bunker. We will treat you according to the rules of war, but we need information about your fleet movements. Kethver looked at the humans with confusion. In his experience, conquered species always surrendered their leaders to save their own lives. But these humans had risked everything to capture him, and they spoke of rules of war as if such things mattered. Under questioning, Kethver revealed something that shocked Elena. The Zephyrian Empire was not driven by evil or greed. They were afraid. Their rapid expansion across the galaxy was motivated by fear of something even more dangerous that lived in the unknown regions beyond their borders. We conquer to survive, Kethver explained. There are things in the dark between the stars that make us look like children. We build our empire as a shield against the true horrors of the galaxy. Operation Valkyrie reached its climax when Tony's disguised ship and 5 others struck the supply convoy simultaneously. The real Zephyrian vessels never had a chance to react before human weapons destroyed their cargo and left 3 enemy battle groups without fuel or ammunition. All ships. This is Admiral Carter. Lisa's voice came over the communication system. Operation Valkyrie is a complete success. The enemy northern flank has been cut off and Supreme Admiral Kethver is in our custody. For the first time since the war began, humans had scored a major victory against the Zephyrian Empire. The aliens who had conquered 47 species were learning that the 48th was unlike any enemy they had ever faced. Amy Morrison listened to the victory reports and thought about her father. Jake had died believing that humans could win if they never gave up fighting. Now his daughter was living to see his faith justified. The tide of war was turning, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that there were worse fates than death, and better things than survival. The humans were teaching everyone the true cost of war and the real meaning of freedom. 3 months had passed since the first battle at New Geneva, and Supreme Commander Thraigvolume was beginning to understand that this war was different from all the others. His fleet had conquered half of human space, but every victory cost more ships and more lives than he had expected. The humans never surrendered, and they never gave up. When their colonies were surrounded, they fought from inside the cities. When their cities fell, they fought from the ruins. When they ran out of weapons, they used farming tools and kitchen knives. Thrakvalum had never seen anything like it on the industrial world of New Pittsburgh. Colonel Sarah Bennett was preparing for the final siege. Her forces were outnumbered 10-1, but she had turned every building into a fortress and every street into a trap. The humans had been digging tunnels and planting explosives for weeks. Colonel, we have reports that Zephyrian ground troops are landing outside the city, Lieutenant Tony Clark said as he checked his weapon. They have twice as many soldiers as we do. Sarah looked out at her troops and felt proud of what she saw. These were factory workers and shop owners and teachers who had learned to fight. They were not professional soldiers, but they had something the Zephyrians did not have. They were fighting for their homes and their families. Listen up, everyone, Sarah called out to her defenders. The enemy thinks we will run when we see their numbers. They think we will surrender when things get tough. They do not know humans. Very well, do they? The soldiers laughed and checked their weapons one more time. They knew they were probably going to die, but they were going to make the Zephyrians pay for every block of their city. On the Galactic Council observation ship Ambassador, Veltar was having trouble sleeping. For the first time in his species' evolution, he was experiencing what humans called nightmares. Images of burning ships and dying soldiers filled his dreams and would not go away. Council member Yarix found him staring out at the stars in the middle of the ship's night cycle. Ambassador, you look unwell. Perhaps you should return to our homeworld and let someone else continue the observations. Veltar shook his head. I cannot leave now. I am beginning to understand something important about these humans. They are teaching us lessons we have forgotten. What kind of lessons? Yarix asked. Lessons about what it means to be alive, Veltar said quietly. We have spent so long avoiding death that we have forgotten how to truly live. These humans choose death over dishonor, and somehow that makes them more alive than we are. Back on Earth, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working day and night in her laboratory studying captured Zephyrian equipment. She had discovered something important about their technology and their way of thinking. Admiral Carter, Elena said during their daily communication, I have figured out why the Zephyrians are having so much trouble with us. Their entire military system is designed for quick victories against enemies who surrender. Admiral Lisa Carter looked tired after months of coordinating the war effort. What do you mean, Elena? Their ships are built to intimidate and overwhelm, Elena explained. Their tactics assume the enemy will give up after seeing their superior firepower. They have never had to fight a long war against someone who refuses to quit. Lisa nodded as she began to understand. So their strength becomes a weakness when they face an enemy who keeps fighting. Exactly, Elena said. They have powerful weapons, but they use a lot of energy. They have strong armor, but it is heavy and slows them down. They are designed to win battles quickly, not to fight long campaigns. On New Pittsburgh, the Zephyrian ground assault had begun. Alien soldiers with advanced weapons were moving through the city streets, but they were not having the easy victory they expected. Every building they entered was booby-trapped. Every corner they turned might hide human defenders. Colonel Sarah Bennett was fighting from the ruins of a school where human children had once learned about mathematics and history. Now it was a fortress where humans were teaching aliens about the cost of conquest. They do not know how to fight in cities, Sarah told her radio operator as explosions echoed around them. Look how they move in straight lines down the middle of streets. They have never fought an enemy that uses guerrilla tactics. The Zephyrian commander on the ground was General Vexstar, and he was becoming frustrated with his soldiers' slow progress. His troops were used to fighting in open spaces where their superior weapons gave them an advantage. In the narrow streets and ruined buildings of New Pittsburgh, the humans could hide and strike without warning. Sir, one of his officers reported. We have taken the industrial district, but we lost 200 soldiers. The humans are fighting from inside machines and hiding in sewers. This is not normal warfare. Vexstar had conquered 12 planets in his career, but he had never faced defenders like these humans. Other species fought honorable battles in open fields where the stronger army won. These humans fought dirty and used every trick they could think of. Amy Morrison had joined the Youth Auxiliary Corps against her mother's wishes. At 17, she was too young to be a real soldier, but she could carry messages and help with communications. Her father's death had made her determined to serve. "Mom, I have to do this," Amy had told Carol when she signed up. "Dad died fighting for our freedom. I cannot just sit at home while other people continue his fight." Carol understood, even though it broke her heart. Jake had raised Amy to believe in standing up for what was right. Now their daughter was following in his footsteps. The communication center where Amy worked was receiving reports from all over human space. The news was always bad. Another colony had fallen or another fleet had been destroyed. But Amy noticed something else in the reports. The Zephyrians were taking longer to win each battle and losing more ships each time. "Lieutenant Hughes," Amy said to her supervisor, "look at these numbers. 3 months ago, the Zephyrians could take a colony in one day. Now it takes them a week. They are getting weaker or we are getting stronger." Lieutenant Hughes looked at the data and smiled. "Both, Amy. We are learning how to fight them, and they are learning that humans do not give up. Every battle costs them something they cannot replace." On New Pittsburgh, the siege continued for 6 days before the last human defenders were overwhelmed. Colonel Sarah Bennett died fighting in the rubble of the school where she had made her last stand. But the Zephyrians had lost over 1,000 soldiers, taking one human city general. Vexstar stood in the ruins and tried to understand what had happened. His army had won, but it did not feel like victory. Too many of his soldiers were dead, and the humans had destroyed everything valuable before they died. Supreme Commander Threigvaloom received the report from New Pittsburgh and felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. His empire had always won through superior force and intimidation. But the humans were not intimidated, and they fought harder when things seemed hopeless. For the first time in Zephyrian history, a conquest was taking longer than planned and costing more than expected. The Supreme Commander was beginning to wonder if some enemies were not worth fighting. The first shots of the war were fired at New Geneva Colony when the sun was rising over the main settlement. Captain Jake Morrison watched from his ship as 60 Zephyrian vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel and immediately began attacking the human defenses. Jake had only 12 ships to defend the colony, but he was not going to run away. The people of New Geneva had been his friends for 3 years, and he would not abandon them. His crew knew they were probably going to die, but none of them complained or asked to retreat. "All ships follow my lead," Jake said into his communication system. "We hit them hard and fast, then fall back to the asteroid field. Make every shot count because we will not get many chances." The Zephyrian ships were huge and covered in thick armor. Their weapons could destroy a human ship with one hit. But Jake had studied their attack patterns from the reports other races had sent before they were conquered. The Zephyrians always attacked the same way because they always won quickly. Jake's ships dove toward the enemy fleet like arrows shot from a bow. The humans used the gravity of the planet to speed up their attack and hit the Zephyrians before they could react properly. 3 enemy ships exploded in the first few seconds, and 2 more were badly damaged. The Zephyrians had never seen anyone attack them so aggressively. Other races always tried to defend themselves or run away. But the humans charged straight at them like they were not afraid to die. "Admiral," one of the Zephyrian officers said to his commander, "the humans are not following standard defensive patterns. They are attacking us while we have superior numbers." Admiral Kethver looked at his screens with confusion. In his 200 years of conquest, he had never seen defenders act this way. Usually, when a weaker force saw his fleet, they either surrendered immediately or tried to hide behind their defensive systems. Jake's ship took a direct hit that knocked out half his weapons, but he kept fighting. Lieutenant Sam Hughes was bleeding from a cut on his head, but he stayed at his post and kept firing at the enemy ships. Around them, the other human vessels were being destroyed one by one, but they never stopped. Attacking on the surface of New Geneva, the colonists were loading the children onto transport ships. They knew the space battle was hopeless, but Jake Morrison and his crews were buying them time to escape. Every minute the human ships fought was another minute for the innocents to get away. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was monitoring the battle from Earth, and she noticed something strange in the Zephyrian communications. Their voices sounded different than in previous battles. Instead of calm confidence, she heard frustration and anger. "They are confused," Elena told Admiral Lisa Carter. "The Zephyrians expected this to be over in minutes. They have lost 8 ships and Jake is still fighting. This has never happened to them before." On board the Galactic Council observation ship Ambassador, Veltar watched the battle with growing shock. His people had studied warfare for thousands of years as a historical curiosity, but they had never seen anything like this. The humans were fighting when they should have surrendered and dying when they should have lived. "This is illogical," Veltar said to his aide. "The human force cannot win. They must know they cannot win. Why do they continue to fight?" Council member Yarix of the amphibious Deltan species was recording everything for the Council archives. "Perhaps they do not understand mathematics," Yarix suggested. "Perhaps they cannot count how many enemy ships there are?" But Veltar was beginning to suspect that the humans understood exactly what they were doing. They were choosing to fight? Impossible odds for reasons the peaceful aliens could not comprehend. Jake's ship was dying around him. The engines were failing and the hull was cracked in 6 places. Half his crew was dead or wounded, but Sam Hughes was still firing the weapons. Through the smoke and sparks, Jake could see that only 3 human ships were still fighting. "Captain," Sam said, "the colony transports are away. All the civilians have escaped." Jake felt a moment of satisfaction. They had saved 3,000 innocent people, including 500 children. That was worth dying for. That was worth everything all. "Ships," Jake said into his communication system. "We have done our job. The people are safe. Now let us show these aliens what humans do when we have nothing left to lose." The 3 remaining human ships flew straight at the Zephyrian flagship. They had no shields left and their weapons were almost destroyed, but they kept shooting. The enemy concentrated all their fire on the human vessels, but Jake and his crews never wavered. Jake's ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the dark space around New Geneva. Sam Hughes died at his post, still trying to reload the weapons. The other 2 human ships were destroyed seconds later, but not before they managed to damage. The Zephyrian flagship Admiral Kethver looked at the wreckage of the human ships and felt something he had never experienced before. These creatures had fought when fighting was hopeless. They had died to save people they barely knew. They had chosen honor over survival. "Sir," one of his officers said, "we have won the battle, but we lost 8 ships and the humans saved all their civilians. This is not how conquest is supposed to work." Kethver nodded slowly. His empire had rules for conquest, and the humans were not following those rules. They were supposed to surrender or at least try to save themselves. They were not supposed to die willingly for abstract concepts like freedom on Earth. Jake's wife, Carol, received the news that her husband was dead. She cried for him, but she was also proud. Jake had died doing what he believed was right. He had saved innocent people and shown the galaxy that humans would not surrender their value. 16-year-old Amy Morrison heard about her father's death and felt something change inside her. She was sad and angry, but she was also determined. Her father had shown her what it meant to be human. Now she would have to help carry on his fight. The Galactic Council observers sent their reports back to the main council chambers. For the first time in 50,000 years, the peaceful aliens were being forced to think about concepts like sacrifice and honor and dying for principles. Ambassador Veltar wrote in his report that the humans had displayed behavior patterns unknown in council species. They had chosen certain death over surrender, and they had seemed proud to make that choice. He did not understand it, but he was beginning to think it might be important. The war was just beginning, and already the Zephyrians were learning that conquering humans would not be like conquering anyone else. Jake Morrison was dead, but his example lived on in every human who heard the story of how 12 ships had held off 60 and saved 3,000 lives. The cost of war was becoming clear to everyone in the galaxy. Jake Morrison walked through the old battlefield on Earth with his aide Lieutenant Sam Hughes. The ground was covered with monuments and metal markers that showed where soldiers had fought and died hundreds of years ago. This place had been called Normandy, and it was where humans had fought against evil during World War II. My great-grandfather fought here, Sam said as he touched one of the stone markers. He was 19 years old when he landed on this beach. Most of his friends died in the first hour, but they kept fighting. Jake nodded and looked across the field. He could almost see the ghosts of young men running across the sand while bullets flew around them. They had known they might die, but they came anyway because someone had to stop the evil that was spreading across the world. The communication device on Jake's belt buzzed. It was Commander Rita Walsh calling from Earth's military headquarters. Her voice sounded stressed and tired. "Jake, the numbers keep getting worse," Rita said. "Our scouts report that the Zephyrian fleet has over 2,000 ships. Some of them are the size of cities. We have never seen weapons like theirs." Jake had seen the reports. The Zephyrian ships could destroy planets from space. They had done it before to other races that tried to resist. Their shields could stop any weapon humans had, and their guns could cut through human ships like paper. "What about the colonies?" Jake asked. "We are moving everyone we can back to the core systems," Rita said. "But 47 colonies is a lot of people to move. Some of them refused to leave their homes." Jake understood. Humans had worked hard to build those colonies. They had turned dead rocks into living worlds with farms and cities. Asking people to abandon everything they had built was like asking them to give up their dreams. Lieutenant Sam was reading something on his tablet. "Captain, the Galactic Council has sent more observers to Earth. They want to watch what happens when we surrender." That made Jake angry. The peaceful aliens could not understand why humans would fight. They thought surrender was the smart choice. They had forgotten that some things were worth dying for. Ambassador Veltar of the Alphean race had visited Earth the day before. He was tall and thin with blue skin and large eyes. He spoke in a soft voice and seemed genuinely confused by human behavior. "Why do you choose death over life?" the ambassador had asked President Henry Clark. "Your species could survive under Zephyrian rule. Many other races have done this. It is better to live as servants than to die as fools," President Clark had tried to explain. "We would rather die free than live as slaves. Our children deserve better than a life of servitude." The ambassador had shaken his head. "This makes no sense. Life is precious. Freedom is just a word. Your children will be alive under Zephyrian rule. That is what matters." Jake and Sam walked to another part of the battlefield. Here there was a monument to soldiers who had died in something called the Civil War. Brother had fought against brother to decide if some humans could own other humans as slaves. Hundreds of thousands had died, but in the end freedom had won. "The council races do not understand," Sam said. "They think we are primitive because we still fight wars. But they have never had to choose between freedom and slavery." Jake's daughter, Amy, had asked him the same question the night before. She was smart for 16 and she understood that war was coming. But she did not understand why they could not. "Just find another way. Dad, why can't we just talk to them?" Amy had said. "Maybe we can make a deal. Maybe we can give them something else instead of our freedom." Jake had looked into his daughter's eyes and tried to explain. "Some people cannot be talked to, Amy. Some people only understand force. The Zephyrians have conquered 47 other races. Do you think they will change their minds for us?" Carol, his wife, had been listening from the kitchen. She understood better than Amy because she was older. She had read the history books and knew that sometimes good people had to fight. Bad people, or the bad people, would win. "Your father is right," Carol had told Amy. "Sometimes fighting is the only choice left. Sometimes you have to stand up to bullies even if they are bigger than you." The communication device buzzed again. This time it was Dr. Elena Rodriguez calling from her laboratory. She had been studying the Zephyrian messages and trying to understand how their empire worked. "Jake, I have found something important," Elena said. "The Zephyrians have conquered 47 races in the last 500 years, but here is the strange part. Most of those races surrendered without fighting. The ones that did fight only lasted a few weeks. Jake stopped walking. What does that mean? It means they have never fought a long war, Elena explained. They are used to quick victories. They threaten someone and then someone gives up. Or they attack and win fast. They have never had to fight someone who keeps fighting back. That was interesting news. Jake had studied military history, and he knew that some armies were good at quick attacks but bad at long wars. If the Zephyrians had never fought a determined enemy, they might not know how to handle one. Sam was looking at his tablet again. Captain, we are getting reports from the outer colonies. The Zephyrian advance scouts have been spotted near New Geneva and Terra Nova. They are taking pictures and studying our defenses. Jake felt his heart beat faster. A war was about to begin. Soon young humans would be fighting and dying just like the soldiers who had died on this battlefield hundreds of years ago. The only difference was that this time they would be fighting among the stars. Sam, contact Admiral Carter, Jake said. Tell her we are ready to deploy. If the Zephyrians want to see what humans can do, we will show them. As they walked back to their transport, Jake looked one more time at the monuments. All those young men had died so that future generations could live free. Now it was Jake's turn to make the same choice. He would fight so that Amy and Carol and all the other humans could keep their freedom. The stars were calling, and war was coming. Jake Morrison was ready to show the galaxy what humans were made of. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the stars through the main window. The year was 2387, and humans had just learned how to travel faster than light. Earth had made contact with alien races only 5 years ago, and everything was still new and strange. Jake had been a soldier for 20 years, and he knew trouble when he saw it coming. The communication screen flickered to life, and Admiral Lisa Carter appeared. Her face was serious, and Jake could see worry in her eyes. She was the head of Earth's space fleet and one of the smartest people Jake knew. When Lisa looked worried, it meant something bad was happening. Jake, we have a problem, Lisa said without any greeting. The Zephyrians have sent us a message, and you need to hear this right. Now, Jake had heard about the Zephyrians from other alien races. They were warriors who conquered planets and made other species their slaves. The peaceful aliens in the Galactic Council always spoke about them in whispers. They were the ones everyone feared, but no one wanted to fight. The screen changed, and a large alien face appeared. The creature had gray skin and sharp teeth. Its eyes were cold and cruel. This was Supreme Commander Thregvolum of the Zephyrian Empire. When he spoke, his voice was like metal scraping against stone. Humans of Earth, the alien said, you are weak and new to space. We give you one choice. Give us all your colonies and planets. Make your people our slaves. Do this and we will let some of you live. If you say no, we will kill every human in the galaxy. You have 30 days to decide. The message ended, and Jake felt cold inside. He had fought in wars before, but this was different. This was not just about winning or losing. This was about the end of everything humans had built among the stars. Lisa appeared on the screen again. The Galactic Council has already told us they will not help, she said. Ambassador Veltar of the Althean race says fighting is wrong. He thinks we should surrender or try to make a deal. Jake knew about the Galactic Council. It was made up of 12 alien races who had lived in peace for thousands of years. They solved problems by talking and never used violence. They thought humans were too violent and primitive because humans still had wars on Earth. What did you tell them? Jake asked. I told them we would rather die fighting than live as slaves, Lisa said. They looked at me like I was insane. They cannot understand why anyone would choose death over surrender. Jake walked to his window and looked at the stars again. Somewhere out there were 47 human colonies with millions of people. They had left Earth to build new homes and start new lives. Now an alien empire wanted to make them all slaves. His daughter Amy was only 16 years old and lived on Earth with her mother, Carol. Jake had joined the space fleet to protect them and give them a better future. Now that future was in danger. The door to the bridge opened and Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked in. She was Earth's best expert on alien life and had spent years studying the different races in the council. Her face was pale and she carried a datapad in her hands. "I have been reading about the council races," Elena said. "Jake, they have changed themselves over thousands of years. They remove the parts of their minds that make them want to fight. They literally cannot understand why we would choose war over peace." Jake looked at the datapad. It showed brain scans and genetic information about the different alien races. All of them had been changed somehow. The parts that made them aggressive or willing to fight had been removed or turned off. "They think we are stupid for wanting to fight," Elena continued. "To them, survival is the only thing that matters. They cannot understand concepts like freedom or dignity or dying for what you believe in." On the screen, Lisa was talking to other Earth officials. President Henry Clark looked tired and old. General Kevin Brooks was studying military reports. Admiral Rita Walsh was shaking her head at the numbers they faced. "How many ships do the Zephyrians have?" Jake asked. "Over 2,000, Lisa said. "We have 340 ships total. They have better weapons and armor. They have been conquering other races for hundreds of years." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He was just one captain with one ship, but he knew what had to be done. Humans would fight because that was what humans did. They fought when things were hopeless. They fought when everyone said they should give up. They fought because some things were more important than staying alive, Admiral, Jake said. "Request permission to take my ship to the outer colonies. If the Zephyrians want a war, they will get one. But we will make them pay for every planet they take," Lisa nodded. "Permission granted, Captain." Show them what humans are made of. As Jake prepared his ship for departure, he thought about history. Humans had always fought impossible odds. They had fought when they were outnumbered and outgunned. Sometimes they won and sometimes they lost, but they always fought. The aliens in the council had forgotten how to fight, but humans never would. The stars waited ahead and somewhere among them. An alien empire was coming to destroy everything humans had built. Jake Morrison and his crew would be ready.